This is M.F.K. Radio Music Focus Knowledge, the ingredients to a better day. I'm here today with my man Anthony Herrera. Anthony, how you feeling, man?
Feeling good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. So for everybody who's watching right now and listening, give a little intro. You let them know who you are and your accolades.
My name's Anthony Herrera. Right now, I'm owner and head instructor of Diamond Valley Jiu Jitsu, brown belt under Rick Marshall at 10th Planet Redlands.
Right. So let's dive into how you were. What's your origin story, if you will? You know what I'm saying? Everybody's is kind of different, right? I've heard everything from the bully stories all the way down to you just stumble into a gym one day or somebody brings you into a gym. What's your origin story?
Actually, I didn't start in a gym. I had like a family friend that he knew some jiu-jitsu. He was a blue belt, and he kind of just we were like wrestling around one day, and he showed me rear naked choke, and then ever since then I was just like fell in love with it. So
he just choked the shit out of you. And
yeah,
you were like
for sure. And I mean, I didn't really grapple up to that point. I did a little just like wrestling around and nothing crazy, but just feeling like that, like, oh man, that's crazy. So after that, I just stuck with him. He showed me some stuff. I was with him for a few years, just learning from him, and then joined my first gym in high school. I was like a senior in high school.
Okay,
and,
all right. Yeah. So you got into it before. I would say martial arts now in our society is a little bit more prevalent than it was even 15 years ago.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, you hear jiu-jitsu and the Muay Thais are a little bit more mainstream. Not a little bit, a lot more mainstream now, I think, than they were 10, 15 years ago. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, yeah. I
mean, it's got to be a good thing for you in as a business owner. You know what I mean? As somebody who teaches the martial art, right? So how do you do that? How do you balance? Because you still compete, too. I see that, right?
Yep.
So you still compete, you're instructing, and you have a business to run. How do you balance all of that? Because I'm sure that can get pretty heavy sometimes.
Yeah, I work full time too, so it's just a lot of time management, really.
Yeah.
You know, I got my full time job. I go home, shower, change, and clean up, do some stuff around the house for a little bit, and then head to the gym, and then I'm there till like 9 o'clock. Teaching. I got the kids class. Then we have, 2 other adult classes usually during the week after that. So, yeah, I mean, just a lot of time management.
And you got a family, too, right? So how do you manage that? So because I'm sure you got to make time for your children. And
yeah, you got to carve out the time. Like, sometimes I'll have to hit up my coaches, tell them I'm going to class late because I got my kids' game or, just stuff like that. Fortunately, I got a good support system of coaches around me and my family too, so they support, so that helps out a lot. Right.
To have a good support system, right? Yeah. That's definitely helps a lot in any aspect of life, I think, right? I think it's important to surround yourself with people who understand the journey that you're on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your goals and what you're set out to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's great, man. That's great to hear. So, as somebody, obviously, as a practitioner of jiu-jitsu, have you ever done any stand-up?
Yeah, actually I have. When I first started like teaching at a gym, I started teaching at Black Flag over where you're at.
Shout out Black Flag Kickboxing, baby.
Shout out Joe, what's up, and Lou too. So they gave me the opportunity to start teaching there, and I took advantage of being able to attend the Muay Thai classes while I was there. So also before that too, I mean, I did a little. I had actually one MMA fight, so before that I had a little bit of stand-up training before then, but no real formal training until Black Flag. That opened my eyes to Muay Thai, man. I really fell in love with it while I was there, for sure.
Yeah. And while you were teaching there, I got to dabble in the jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean?
Right, that's where we met.
There's a lot of shit talking, right? There's running jokes, right, in between both forms of martial arts where we talk shit, but there's a mutual respect there, though.
Oh, yeah.
There really is. And I think understanding either one of those martial arts is having a big advantage on the average person, regardless of how you look at it, right? Yeah. Because, I mean, I think, I want to say it's 1% of adult males are trained
Yep.
in any martial art.
Yep.
So think about that population wise. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I want not to quote Joe Rogan, but I think he said, if I had the choice, or I want to have the choice, if I have to defend my family or myself, I want to have the choice to know who's going to end up in the hospital.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't know. You hear arguments on both sides, but I think the other side of it is people who are ignorant or never tried it, right? Or are afraid to.
Yep.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's a lot of it is people they think they know like what they would do in a fight in a situation like that, and then when your first day in Muay Thai, your first day in Jiu Jitsu, you go in there and you get a reality check. You're like, oh man, you don't know nothing that you thought you did. But yeah, these people out there, you got to get in the gym and try it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think just like anything, right? You can. I mean, we can make a food reference, right? Like, I don't want to try that. Shit's nasty. Like, you won't really know until you try it. And I think it's important, one, because even as an adult, you can learn more discipline, right?
Yep.
Because we think we're disciplined, but to your point, once you get in there, you go, holy fuck. Like, you know what I mean? It's a way different world than you expect.
Yep, and then even once you get in there, there's levels to once you're in there too. There's people that just train for like a hobby or just train to get in shape, and then there's competitors, and then everywhere in between. So
yeah, I talked. I had Nate on a few weeks back. We talked about that, how you got the guys that are getting ready to compete. You know what I mean? And the 22-year-old kid who's fucking eyes are on the prize, and he's in there to kill everybody, you know what I mean? And I'm fucking 38. I do IT. I got to work tomorrow.
Yep.
You go in there, but but there's levels to it. And I think being able to surround yourself with people, though, who are that hungry too is there's something motivating about it. You know what I mean? Speaking of motivation, I know it can be difficult, right? Like we said earlier, the way you balance your time management, business, family, all of that, right? Sometimes life can be a little monotone, mundane, right? Because we do the same thing over and over again. What keeps you motivated, man? What motivates you to? Because I'm sure there's days where you feel like, oh fuck, I don't want to go in there. You know what I mean? But you do what's necessary in order for you to maintain the discipline that we're talking about. So what motivates you? What keeps you driven?
A couple things for sure. My students keep me driven, knowing that I got to be, show up for them. If I'm not there, they're not going to be doing jiu-jitsu. So
right.
So that keeps me motivated too, having my students there, and then also I just really like jiu-jitsu. I like teaching people. I like watching them progress. I like watching them get better. That's what keeps me going. Right.
So you found purpose in helping other people. That's big, man. That's big. And I think that's, that you can plug that into a lot of aspects of life. Finding a purpose, right? There's something that will keep you driven and motivated. So when you teach, because I always, I help coach at Black Flag, right? And there's some students that are there to learn, that are coachable. Mm-hmm. And then there's some that, they're just for bragging rights, right? For the Instagram posts, for the, So what do you look for in a student, right? So if somebody says, hey, Anthony, you know what? I want to compete. Like, I want to be a champ. Like, this is what I want to do. What do you look for in somebody whose goals are set that high?
I look at their attendance, and also like their the quality of training that they put in while they're there at the gym. If they say they want to compete and they're only there once a week, a couple times a month,
right.
And while they're there, they're like, not even finishing the whole training session, or they can't make it through the warm-ups. That's right there is a clear indication of like, okay, you want to compete but you're not ready. So I just look for the students that are there all the time. They're putting in the work, and when they ask me to compete, it's usually, right away I'm like, yeah, no problem, man. You're in here all the time. Very few times have I had to tell some students like, hey, let's wait until you get a little bit more classes under your belt, or until you're more consistent. My rule is usually if you're competing, I need to see you in there at least 3 times a week. At the minimum.
That's your minimum. Right.
If you're competing, if you're not competing, then just make it when you can make it. But
yeah, how soon before you know somebody's full of shit?
Yeah, right away. Like if they come in here saying they're better than they actually are.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean it's instant. Right when you get on the mats and you start rolling, there's like a saying like the mats never lie, and that's how it is. Like right when you get on the mats and start rolling with someone, yeah, right away.
Yeah. So how do you deal with people like that? Do you humble them, or do you kind of let them just iron themselves out? You know what I mean, through the process? Because I will say this: when I started Muay Thai, I have a boxing background, so I went in there like, I think I'm gonna have an edge with my hands. You know what I mean? And they humbled me the fuck right out. You know what I mean?
Right.
In a matter of a week, I realized, all right, I need to chill the fuck out. I was getting my ass kicked every day, rightfully so, right? Because I was going in there, throwing haymakers and shit. So how do you deal with somebody like that? Do you let the gym kind of iron them out, or do you have a conversation, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, usually in the beginning, I'll just let the gym handle it. We have a few upper belts in there, some guys that have been there for a while, some guys that are right on the verge of getting promoted. So usually that the students will handle it, to be honest with you. But if it ever did, a very few times, probably like once or twice, we've had to like sit someone down and say, hey man, like,
chill the fuck out.
Yeah, chill out. We're not, this isn't like a competition every day. We're here trying to get better. If you hurt your training partners, then now you don't have no one to train with. No one wants to train with you. So
yeah. And back to our earlier point, you got people in there who have jobs and shit.
Exactly. I mean? Yep. Myself included. So
right. So a lot of people argue about the practicality of jiu-jitsu in a real life scenario.
Oh yeah.
Me personally, I'd say whoever argues against that, you're full of shit, or you've never done it. Right. You've never been fucking strangled by somebody who does jiu-jitsu. But what's your take on that? How would you counter that argument?
I wouldn't really counter that argument. I would just tell them, like, there is a difference between a street situation and sport jiu-jitsu. Sure. And most of the time, the jiu-jitsu we're teaching is sport jiu-jitsu. And so you just got to be realistic and let your students know, like, hey, this is something you wouldn't do in a self-defense situation. Like, you're not going to try to pull guard out on the street,
Right.
Even
me,
I'm not. I'm gonna stand up as long as I can. If it hits the ground, then I'll use my jiu-jitsu. But you just got to be real with your students, and you do teach. You got to teach both sides of it, the self-defense aspect of it and the sport side of it, so that they know the difference, and make sure you explain it to them. But
I like the way you put that, because I've never heard it put that way before. The way you coined it is sports jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So either way, I think there's still a real high level of practicality, even to sports jiu-jitsu, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
To your point, like if you have you ever had to use it in a real life scenario?
Yeah, not anytime recently, but like probably like I would say less than 5 times.
Yeah.
Not even anything crazy, not to beat anybody up or anything.
Just hold. It doesn't take much, though.
No, it doesn't.
You know what I mean?
Especially if they don't know anything.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't take much. You could do a standing fucking head and arm. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
exactly.
Then they're gonna go right out. They're not even knowing what happens, because that's one thing that I love about jiu-jitsu is that it's very when it's happening, you're not even aware most of the time, right?
Yeah.
If you go with somebody who knows what they're doing, you move an inch, and the next thing you know, you're going out. You're like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Yeah. There's art about it. You know what I mean? The style. Well, so let me ask you this. Speaking of styles, you have no-gi, right? You have the 10 planets, and then you have gi jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's even running jokes in between those two, right? And it's somewhat the same sport, right? It is the same sport. It's just you wear a gi in one and you don't in the other. So why no-gi? I
just like it more because I feel like it's it's almost like high school wrestling, you know, with submissions. So I don't know. I just feel I just like the way that you use your like clinching game, your grips and holds versus relying on the gi. Personally, I've done both. You know, I like gi jiu-jitsu too. I have no problem with it. I just prefer no gi. You know, so that's what I stuck with, and that's just my passion. And then as of recently too, no-gi jiu-jitsu has a big uptake in popularity, you know, so
yeah, right.
Over gi jiu-jitsu. So that's good. I'm happy that I stuck with no-gi jiu-jitsu, especially now that it's like gaining popularity.
A lot. Right. A lot. Yeah, it's growing drastically.
Yeah.
And
it's in the UFC now.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Right. Would you say that there's more of a real life feel to it also, right? Because you're not always gonna have a lapel to grab onto, you know what I mean? Should you have to use it in a real life scenario?
I always say, in my opinion, it depends on where you live. Like, you know, we live here in California, and there's, you know, we got a hoodie season, and that's pretty much it. So, but you live in New York, there's guys with jackets and stuff. Yeah. You do got lapels to grab onto.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's why. That's for around here, no-gi jiu-jitsu, you know. We're already ready to go in our flip flops and everything. So
yeah, definitely the weather for that's crazy. I've never thought about it that way. That's a good way to look at it, though. You're right, because if you're somewhere where someone's always wearing a jacket, then you're always gonna have that frame, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy. I never thought of it that way. All right, so if you had to name your top 5 martial arts, what would they be?
Top 5.
Top 5. Yeah. Narrow it down to top 5.
I'll put jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai top 2 for me, and then man, I don't even know. Like, I guess wrestling's considered a martial art. So I'll go with wrestling. Man, I don't even know what other 2. I think those are the only 3 that I would stick with, to be honest with you. Maybe Taekwondo. Taekwondo has some pretty good, like, you know, striking too.
Their kicks, yeah. I will say that. Like, I think I don't like the way they punch. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's very awkward. It's not really, for me, it's not practical. That's my opinion. But their kicks are fucking crazy though.
Yeah.
And you can plug them into, because we've seen guys that come into, you know, to do Muay Thai, and they have Taekwondo kicks, but they're able to adapt really well, and they're able to kind of plug their kicks into the stance, because the stance is way different too. It's very jumpy, and you know what I mean?
Very narrow, like, not wide at all.
Right, it's bladed, right? Yeah, to where Muay Thai is kind of square, hips forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they're able to implement those kicks really well. So I agree with you. I think.
And I think the 5th one, I don't know how I forgot this, but judo. You got, you know, judo's
yeah.
So
judo's definitely top 5 for me. Judo, I would say if I had to name my top 5, I'm with you. It's top 2 is Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu. I have to throw boxing in there.
Okay, yeah.
I had to throw boxing in there. Wrestling, and probably, if I had to choose between Taekwondo and Judo, it'd probably be Judo.
Right.
To be honest with you. Yeah, because I mean the throws and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of practicality to that.
Yeah,
for sure. So when you're training, right, to compete, because again, you aside from all of those other things that you do, how do you get ready? What's your ritual? What do you do? How long is your camp, if you have a camp, or is it just kind of like a shit? You know, whenever I have time, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna grind it out to kind of get ready for that.
No, like I used to before, when I would compete like purple belt and below. Yeah, I wouldn't compete that often, and I wasn't training as much as I am now. So I would have like a camp, and I'd have to get more in shape and cut weight. Now that I have the gym, I train like 6 days a week, so I'm in pretty good shape. So I don't really have to cut weight or anything. If anything, I just ramp up my cardio a little bit and ramp up the hard rolls. You know.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. That's how I get ready for it. You know, I do a little bit of extracurricular exercise too, like a little bit of weightlifting, push-ups, pull-ups, stuff like that. But
so how do you? So when I was talking to Nate, he's a black belt. He was talking about, he was kind of comparing like the constricted in weightlifting to the way you constrict in jiu-jitsu. Would you agree with that? You think that there's a correlation there, or at least, in the preparation for weight training is a good way to kind of get you ready?
Yeah, I really do think that weight training is good to do alongside with jiu-jitsu because, I mean, it never hurts to be stronger. You got two guys that have the same technique and one's stronger, while the guy that's stronger is going to have the edge.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think you definitely need that alongside with your regular training. You need to institute some kind of strength training. Doesn't necessarily have to be weights. You can do calisthenics, push-ups, and stuff like that, but I would definitely add some kind of strength training.
What does a camp for jiu-jitsu look like? Like, what I mean? You're getting ready for a tournament or whatever. Yeah. What does it look like? Because I know, I know what it looks like for Muay Thai. You got the shark tanks and things like that. What does it look like for jiu-jitsu? Because I can honestly say I don't know what even it entails. You know what I mean?
It's pretty similar. Like, I would say the closest thing we have to like a camp would be like when we all at the gym, when a big group of us compete. So we know the date that's coming up and everything. So right. I'd say in the month leading up to that, we'll switch some of our classes into comp classes where we'll focus on like live drills. We call them like dead zones, where it's like, some of the worst spots you can be in, like mount or, have your back taken, side control. We'll start there, and then you got to work your escapes, and as soon as you escape, you reset. So you're just constantly working those bad spots. And then we'll do the same thing with submissions, start with like an arm bar locked in, and then you got to try to escape.
So you're handicapping them essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And we're putting them in like the worst spots they could be in. So this way, when they're there in the competition, right. They've already been there. Yeah.
It's second nature.
Yeah, that's the goal, exactly.
Right. Oh, all right. That's crazy. That's cool though. I can see how that can be effective, right? Because you're basically you're putting them under a wet blanket, and they have to get out of it.
Right.
All right. That's crazy.
And then we do the shark tanks too, here and there. Yeah, we do that.
The same way? So like one person?
Yeah, and then we'll just like probably have one round, and they'll every minute or so we'll swap people, or every 30 seconds they'll get like a fresh person.
That's that's got to be grueling.
Yeah.
That's got to be, because there is, I mean, you think you have cardio until you do. And even between the two different martial arts, the cardio is way different.
Yep.
Because when we would do, Muay Thai on Monday and then Jiu-Jitsu on Tuesday, you feel the difference, right? When somebody putting their body weight on top of you and you trying to get out of it slowly, because you can't really just mule them off. You know what I mean? You got to kind of inch your way out, and there's definitely a big difference in the cardio. So as somebody who's done both, which one, honest opinion, which one do you think takes more cardio to survive?
I think they're different. But I don't know, man. I guess I'd kind of say Muay Thai, to be honest with you, because jiu-jitsu, like you could be, especially if your technique's pretty good, you could be a little bit lazy. You could rest a little bit here and there. But that's not a good habit to have if you're a competitor. So, like a fine line right there.
Yeah. So, and we were having a conversation, right? Kind of talking about both martial arts. And the point came up that in training, right, between both of those, there's an aspect of hurting each other where in Muay Thai, that's your goal, right, is to make the other person stop, and you're gonna strike them. And in Jiu-Jitsu, it's almost the opposite, right? You don't want to hurt the other person, but you want to get to the point where you almost do. You know what I mean? You agree with that? Yeah.
It's you take them up to that point as long as the person can handle it until they tap. So and that's good. You want to be a good training partner too, and give them that time to tap, and not just break their arm or choke them out or whatever.
But there is the occasional asshole though, right?
Oh yeah, there always is. Always is,
How do you deal with somebody like that though? So especially if it's somebody experienced, let's say, right? Let's say you got another brown belt and knows his shit and has somewhat of an ego, which is terrible to have in martial arts. But they're out there. There's people out there who have big egos, and they're somewhat skilled. So how do you deal with somebody, or how would you deal with somebody like that, especially if they walk into your fucking gym? How do you deal with that?
Well, if they come into my gym like that, I gotta be the mat enforcer and get in there and try to do my best to handle it. But if it's another gym or something, you can always just avoid the rolls, or you can tell someone's like that. I'm like, I'm good, pass on it. Or just get in there and see what you can do. Try to outbest them. But I kind of don't have a choice in the gym, because I don't want new people coming in and starting that kind of stuff around there. So, but like I said, in other gyms, just play it by ear. I don't really. I know some people like take it super serious and stuff like that, and with their egos and everything, but I'm not scared to tap, man. Like, I gotta work the next day or whatever. So I'd rather go home, and be out training the next day. So
yeah, I mean, you ain't getting a check out of it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I agree with you on that, definitely. But there is, I will say, in every, we see them sometimes. They don't last very long usually.
Right.
You know what I mean? When you have that ego, they don't last very long because, there's always a bigger dog.
Yeah, they get weeded out.
Yeah, 100%. And there is, there's a certain bond that you grow with the people that you train with. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That those people, like you, to your point, they kind of weed themselves out.
Yeah, and it's like a family too. I mean,
yeah.
And if there was someone that came to my gym, tried to join my gym, and continued to have that kind of like attitude or whatever, I would just ask them to leave, because like it is a family. You don't want other people to be like, well, I don't want to train here anymore because this guy's always beating me up.
They get discouraged. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That too. But then at the same time, sometimes people got to get beat up a little bit. But like I said, it's a fine line. It's a fine line.
It is a very fine line. I agree with you. But I think it is part of it, though. You're right. You're not really going to take anything away if you don't get ground up a little bit.
Right.
Exactly. You know what I mean? It does build confidence, for one, knowing that you're not made out of glass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That you can take a little bit of punishment. And there is some level of satisfaction at the end of it. It's rewarding to know that, fuck, I just got through that. You know what I mean? Even though you get your ass kicked a little bit here and there, you know what I'm saying? Good days, bad days. There's days where, you go in there and you feel, it's just like anything in life, I guess, right? Good days, bad days. But there, you go in there, you do well, you feel like, damn, I chipped everybody up a little bit. That was, and there's days you go, God damn, I got my shit fucked up today. But it's a roller coaster, but it's good. It builds character. It builds discipline.
Mm-hmm. And those days never stop, no matter what level you are. Yeah. Like, you're going to have your good days and you're going to have your bad days. You're going to drive home sometimes silent, no radio. You know what I mean?
Just fucking thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Why did that happen? What could have I done? And those, like you said, those days are good. They help you to be better and to see where you messed up, or where you could have been, your timing could have been better, little things like that. So if it, like, all of it is part of the experience, right. The good days and the bad days. So
for sure. And it's one of those things where you're continuously, you should be continuously learning.
Right.
You're never too old to learn.
Forever a student.
That's right. Forever a student. That's good. Yeah. Because if you get it in your mind that you know everything or you're the best, you're walking in with the wrong state of mind, I think, right? And to what we were saying earlier, like, it's always a bigger dog.
That's what's good about martial arts is when, for the most part, when you do, think you're, oh man, I'm getting really good, so you roll with somebody that's way better than you, you're like, man, I'm nowhere yet. I got a lot to learn still.
Right.
No matter what level of the game you are. So it's good that you get that reality check sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's necessary almost.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, because what you don't want to do is walk around thinking that you know everything in any area of life, right?
Right.
But in this aspect, you get humbled real quick, right? So when you, let's say, or somebody visits your gym, or you go to another gym to cross train, what's the etiquette that you would promote amongst your students? You know what I mean? Because we've cross trained before in other gyms, spar, and some gyms are cool, you know what I mean? And it's everybody's inviting, and it's there's no ego, but I've been to gyms where you go in there and they're trying to take your fucking head off. First round they got something to prove,
yeah,
and then you gotta kind of you you get into firefights, and then you know what I mean. It's it can get heavy, if you will. You know what I mean. So what's the gym etiquette that you teach, you know, to your students, especially with cross training?
Fortunately, like my students especially have a lot of experience with going to other gyms and having other people come to our gym, because we host an open mat every Saturday at 10 a.m. and everyone's welcome from any gym. So we're pretty welcoming there, and then we try to carry that attitude on when we go visit other open mats too. And we, you know, as long as you just walk in there with a humble attitude, don't try to like take everyone's head off when you roll, and just have a good time. You know, usually everyone's pretty respectful. So as long as you're respectful, you know, that should translate. Yeah, it should be reciprocated. Exactly.
So do you have that conversation with your students though, or is it just common knowledge?
Yeah, like I was going back to like when I was talking about how the gym's kind of like a family. Like everyone
Right.
I don't think I've ever had to have any kind of talk like that with anybody at the gym. And I try to lead by example, you know, like
Right,
when
right.
I go to the gym, I introduce myself to everybody, and, you know, everyone that's on the mat. I never met him before, you know, you go say, hey, what's your name? And usually that's the icebreaker right there. It's just when people kind of are like, oh, who's this guy? And you're quiet in the corner, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
but, I mean, I haven't had any bad experiences like that going into another gym, or even someone coming into my gym and really trying to like challenge us or us challenge them. So I've been fortunate in that aspect, I guess.
That's good. I mean, it
Yeah.
speaks a lot to the way you guys carry yourself. You know what I mean? Because I can say it, you know, we've visited other gyms, and you go in there and there's ego right away. You know what I mean? And
Right.
they're trying to take your head off, and you have no. I mean, you're not gonna just go in there and let somebody, you know, one up you like that. You gotta kind of reciprocate, and it should always be that way. Like in the sense of whatever you put out, I'm gonna reciprocate. So if you know what I mean, you want to take it. There's nothing worse than a bully who's a pussy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than that. Then you're throwing bombs, or you're rolling extra hard. You're you know what I mean? You're not fucking letting go when somebody's tapping. But then when they turn it up on you, you go, whoa, hey, turn it down. You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than that.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
nobody likes that.
At all.
Nobody likes
At
that.
all.
And like I said, like I try to lead by example. I think a lot of, I mean, I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot, but I think a lot of that has to do with like their coach's example that they set too, you know?
Right.
So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, learned behavior, right?
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I think it all starts at the top,
Yep.
right? So
Got to lead from the front, you know?
that's it. That's it, man. And one thing that I commend you for too is you're still out there. You're still competing, like, you know what I mean? Because you're so busy. You know what I mean? You're such a busy dude that you could actually not take a back seat, but just dedicate yourself to strictly teaching. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that I commend you for that, because that does. Do you do it because you love it? You do it to stay sharp? Like what?
All of the above. That also, and also, so like I'm saying, like to set a good example for my
Right.
students. I want. I'm not gonna ask them to compete for me, and then I'm just sitting from the sidelines, not doing anything. You know. I mean, it's one thing if you're injured. Completely understand.
Right.
I had a little like stint of injuries. That's why I had took a couple years off of competing. But
Right.
as soon as I felt like, you know, my body was back to normal, I got right back to it. And as long as my body lets me, you know, I'll try to compete as long as I could.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, right? You have people who do, you know, like we were talking earlier, the different martial arts, right? MMA obviously is fucking gigantic right now,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's prevalent, it's popular, it's mainstream, and now you have a lot of MMA gyms, right? There's no strict discipline. There is, well, let me rephrase that. There's no pure discipline. It's you're learning a little bit of everything, right?
Right.
How do you feel? Do you feel that there is a chink in that kind of jiu-jitsu that's taught that way, where you're doing it, you know, once a week, and then you're striking one day, and then the next day you're doing, you know, weight training, whatever the case may be, right? I don't know their you know how they train, but do you feel like there is an advantage for somebody who does strictly jiu-jitsu?
It I feel like it depends on your goals. You know, if you are going to be, that's your goal is to be an MMA fighter, to be in the UFC one day, then you should train all those disciplines because that's what you need. But, you know, if you want to advance, you know, if you just want to be like a jiu-jitsu world champ, I think training all those other aspects is going to take away from the focus on the jiu-jitsu training because you don't have as much time as you would on just jiu-jitsu. So just depends on your goals. Like, I don't think it's a chink. I think if you're doing MMA, then that's good to train all those disciplines. But if you're trying to be a jiu-jitsu world champ and that's your goal and you're training MMA also, then it might be a little bit harder for you because, you know, you got to train all those disciplines also.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's all time.
Yeah.
For me, it's time, right? How much time can you dedicate? Just like anything. How much time can you dedicate to each specific thing? And to your point, I mean, if you're doing MMA, you got to dabble in everything.
Yeah, you have to.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to touch it all. So, to your earlier point, now you're starting to see no-gi kind of at the forefront of martial arts, right? Where now even the UFC has these big competitions. Do you feel, you know, just like anything, right? You know, you can. I always revert everything back to music. You know, where you listen to an artist before they're huge.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You go, man, you know this. I love this artist, and then they blow up, and then it becomes huge, and then sometimes their music starts to get watered down. And do you feel like there's a danger there when it comes to jiu-jitsu, bringing it to that forefront, or do you feel like it's a good thing that it's a spotlight on something that should grow?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing. I don't see it being watered down. If anything, I think like these bigger shows like the UFC, even One Championship, they have it.
That's right.
On their like mixed in with their cards. I think it's a good thing that they're doing that.
I agree with you, and big shout out to One because that promotion doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion, because they do Muay Thai, they do Jiu-Jitsu, they do MMA, they do a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So to watch all of those martial arts get spotlighted like that, it's a big thing, right? I think if I'm right, they're bringing Muay Thai not as an official Olympic game, but it's like I forget what the phrase is. It's like a side game. No, they do it. You know what I mean? To highlight the sport. So for me, when I heard that, I was like, that's a huge thing. Do you think jiu-jitsu will ever see an Olympic game, and should it?
I don't know, man. I know they've been talking about it back and forth for as long as I've been doing jiu-jitsu, pretty much. And what I think maybe it's just like the rule set, and then also like if anything, I would think if it got instituted into the Olympics, that would probably be gi jiu-jitsu. I would think so. But yeah, but I don't know with the popularity coming up. And then when you were asking like if it's a good thing, I think the fact that they're on those big events like that, I think it pushes the action. Like it makes it so that it's more interesting. And then they're changing some of them change the rule set to push the action. So as far as it being in the Olympics, man, that would be cool. But I don't know if we're ever going to see that, to be honest. Like because it's just a lot of different rule sets, like I said, and then like gi or no gi, which one's it going to be, you know?
Yeah.
I would think gi because it's traditional, but because judo,
I would think so too.
Judo they use
it's
the gi, so
karate,
yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Taekwondo too, right? It's in the Olympics. It is, yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's all gi. So yeah, I think you're
it'd
right.
be cool to see though.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah,
I think that's something that should happen. You know, will it? I don't know. I mean, and will Muay Thai actually make it all the way? You know, make it an official sport? I don't know. I mean, I'm always thrown back with the Olympics because you got shit like ribbon dancing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's like, and you know,
synchronized swimming. Like,
yeah, and then you know you have shit like Muay Thai, acro gymnastics. My son does acro gymnastics, and that's such a tough fucking sport, and it's not an official Olympic sport. But you got ribbon dancing,
right?
You know what I mean? And I'm always very, very confused at how these decisions were made. You know what I mean? What the fuck is involved?
I don't know. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's really strange. I think, you know what I mean? Like, what drives that? Like, There must be a lot of politics and shit involved.
Oh yeah, probably
You know?
a committee and all that. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And who the fuck is voting on that? You know, it's very, very strange.
Not us, or
Yeah,
I'll
not
be
us.
in there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right. It's like the Grammys, right?
Yeah.
Like who the fuck? who decided that? Yeah, no, definitely. But so jiu-jitsu, obviously, you know, to what we're talking about now, its growth in popularity. You're starting to see the age of people who practice it smaller and smaller and smaller. Now I mean, you have 5-year-olds now, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are competing.
Yeah.
That are competing, which is, to me, that's amazing. I think it's great.
Yep.
Right? And there's a lot of people, parents, let me rephrase that. There's a lot of parents who don't understand the benefit of putting your child in any sport first and foremost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not going to take away from any other sport. I mentioned that on a previous show. I think any sport is great. Any sport can teach your child discipline,
right?
And gives them motivation, and there's a lot to gain from it, right? But there's something particular about martial arts that we were talking, just feeding off of what we were talking about earlier. You know, the confidence, the ability for your child to understand that there's wins and losses in their life,
mm-hmm.
and that they can bounce back from that they can work through adversity, right? So for the parents out there who are afraid of their child, you know, being involved in martial arts, what would you say?
I would say,
especially as a coach.
Yeah,
right?
I would say they should be more afraid of them not being involved in martial arts. But
how so?
Because, well, like you said, you know, it prepares them for, jiu-jitsu and almost any martial art can be related to life, you know, like you said, and just shows them that in real time, you know, they see, they start, you know, they look at a move, they don't know it, they start to learn it, then, you know, next thing you know, they're like really efficient at it, and then you see their confidence grow, and then also when they start sparring and they start using it against the other kids, and like I said, just in real time, you can see their confidence grow. You can see, we try to teach them discipline in there. Like when, you know, at the beginning of class, at the end of class, we line up, we bow, we shake hands, make sure you look at, you know, your partner in the eye when you shake hands, eye contact, and all that on top of the jiu-jitsu skills. It's a good, like a good model for your kid, for even an adult, but especially for kids, the younger the better, you know, for them to be disciplined, self-motivated, and see the results of their work, you know, the fruits of their effort.
And another thing that I want to add to that, all really great points, is that I've seen personally, you know, kids who were being bullied, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't have the confidence to stand up for themselves, come in, and after 6 months, it's a different fucking kid.
Yep.
Different kid, because they're not going to allow that to happen anymore.
Yeah, and then their whole life turns around after that, because they don't have to walk around, you know, holding their head down.
You're not walking on eggshells anymore.
They're confident.
Right. You're not worried about, you know, somebody that kid that was smacking you in the back of your head every day. You're not worried about him anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not, you know, and another thing though is that a lot of parents associate being violent, martial arts, with being violent. No, mm-hmm. There's violence involved, right? But there's also a lot of discipline involved, right? So the ability to take action in a violent situation is not the same as being violent.
Yeah, you're right.
And there's a big misconception. I think every man should have the capacity to be violent, right? Because God forbid you ever in a situation where you need to defend your family. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
What are you going to do? Are you going to be that fucking guy who stands around, you know what I mean, while somebody, you know, smacks your wife in the face and takes her purse? Like, you're going to be that guy? And they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's a sad thing to say. And, you know, I'm sure people will misperceive, you know, what I'm saying but it's not the same thing. I think everyone should have the ability to be violent in a situation where they need to defend themselves. Would you second that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think also like being a martial artist or training in martial arts gives you the ability to like understand violence, right? So you know that,
the limits.
You know the limits exactly. You know, like this could really hurt somebody. Do I really want to do this? Or I can just incapacitate him, and go get help or something. Like it does make you think more because you see how you can hurt somebody really bad, and you don't. Not most people don't really want to do that,
Right.
You want to defend yourself, but you don't want to hurt anyone.
There's nothing scarier than a scared person.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Backed up in a corner, don't know what to do.
They're the ones that are going to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're the ones that are going to grab a knife. They're the ones that are going to grab a weapon. The first thing they're going to do is reach for a weapon.
Right.
Because they don't have the capacity to physically defend themselves in any other way. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So I think under learning any martial arts, anything. I mean, to your point, wrestling. I just seen a story the other day where this fucking crazy person was trying to take a little girl from her mom at it's like a grocery store, and nobody could do anything. I mean, this guy was punching the shit out of everybody, and he's pulling on he's playing tug of war with this little girl, and 17-year-old kid, D1 wrestler, out of nowhere, comes, grabs this dude, puts him on his fucking head, and just pins him down and waits for the cops. So that kid, his training and the ability for him to act in that moment saved that child.
Right. Yep. And just like you said, being able to know what you can do to somebody in the gym that's that big, and you're like, okay, this guy doesn't know anything. For sure, I'm going to be able to, help this person out that's in need, at the least, or if, it has to be your family, but.
Right.
Yeah.
And to your point, there's a big misconception too that size and muscle is everything. It's really not. I mean, I don't care what the martial art is. Just because you're strong, okay, being strong is great. Don't get me wrong, right? It helps. It gives you an edge if you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're oblivious, I don't care how big you are. You're gonna get fucked up.
Oh yeah.
Somebody, just because you're big, you walk into Diamond Valley and you think you're gonna muscle everybody. You're gonna get strangled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'll put them with the girls.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe always says that, I'll let the girls take care of them. You know what I mean? It's lightweight. So I think having, everyone should train something. I always say that. I sound like a broken record, but it's just there is, again, a level of confidence and ability that it changes the way you think and the way you behave.
Yeah, because I always say like it's you can apply anything like in Jiu Jitsu, you could apply it to life, and in the way you train and the way you see things, and the same with Muay Thai, right? Like little like sayings and things like that. It's all applies to life and training. It goes both ways.
100%. I agree with you, and I think you can cross reference all the things that you learn in martial arts.
Yep.
In any aspect of life, right? And starting with discipline. I'm huge on discipline because I think, to quote Mike Tyson, he said, discipline is doing things you don't want to like you like it.
Yep. And
that's hard to do.
Yep.
That is very difficult to do. But I'll tell you this, if you're able to do that, you will inadvertently meet successes that you've never seen before if you're able to apply that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because doing things that you don't like you like it, or doing it even though you don't feel like it, you do it anyway, you start to do that, you'll see huge changes. Right.
And on the other end of that, like if you don't do that, subconsciously you pick up on that, and you're like letting yourself down that you could do that, but you're just not not disciplined enough to get off the couch or whatever it is.
Yeah, and there's a depressive aspect that comes behind that. Yep. You know what I mean? I think human beings are inherently, we're meant to be in forward motion, right? Always pursuing something, and when you don't, there's something depressive about that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
It's like something's missing.
Yeah, like something, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way. There's a void there, you know. And when you practice martial arts, you're able to kind of fill that void. There's something about it, you know what I mean? Especially if for people who come from difficult backgrounds,
Oh yeah.
right? And you know, whether it's violent, whether it's even emotionally void. There's something about, one, the camaraderie that you get from the people you train with, to there even an endorphin dump, right?
Yep.
From the physical aspect of it. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
100%.
there's something fulfilling about it. You know, training and going in there and really, you know, kicking the shit out of each other sometimes, you know, and then coming out of it and you're able to just kind of high five and you're good to go.
Yeah. Like, you know, everyone that trains, you know, Muay Thai or Jiu Jitsu, a lot of us say like that's our therapy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how we deal with our problems, and it's also
cheaper than therapy. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, definitely, and it's also a form of like forced meditation, because when you're training, you know, when you're in there, especially sparring, you know, when you're in a live situation, you don't really have time, or you can't think about anything else but what you're doing at that moment. So it forces you to be in that like meditative flow state, you know, and that's the goal anyways of Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu, to get yourself to that state so you can, you know, flow.
That's a really, really good perspective. A forced meditative state, right? Because you're right. I think you have to put yourself in a mind frame where you don't so much detach, but you got to turn it on, right? And you got to stay focused, and there's nothing else there. You're kind of
right
in a meditative state. So that's a really good way to put it. What you take away from being able to take a loss, even.
Oh yeah,
that's tough, right? And you see it a lot on the kids. You know, my own kid. You know, he's competing in Muay Thai now, and you know, when he takes an L, it digs him. He's really competitive, so it hurts him. You know what I mean? It hurts him. But, and as much as I want to be like, it's okay, you know, you gotta kind of you gotta let him learn. You gotta let them learn that it's okay. You can bounce back, right? You're gonna see another day. You're gonna train harder. You let them take that lesson from that loss, as hard as it can be as a parent. You know what I mean? So how do you walk your students through taking a loss? Because that's tough to do. Because, you know, when a kid, or not even just a kid, a person, when a person takes a loss, there's they shut down a little bit. You know what I mean? And nobody wants to hear shit after you go through something difficult like that. You know what I mean? So how do you walk your student through a loss?
Well, basically, I just tell them, like, you know, already before they set foot on the mat, I always tell my students, you know, like, hey, I'm already proud of you that you're here. You know, like, you made it here. You showed up. You made weight. You're about to step on the mats. Like, whatever happens out there, just do your best. You know, listen to us as our coaches, and you know, that's it. So, you know, if they do end up losing, you know, I'll right away, you know, pull them aside and try to, you know, ask them or critique them right there if there's anything to critique them about. Sometimes the person's, you know, they just get caught, and it's like, hey man, you just got caught. It's no big deal. But the main thing is for them to not be discouraged. You know, you have to lose in order to get those wins. Everybody starts, you know, nobody is just undefeated all the way through their jiu-jitsu career. Like, never. You're going to get tapped sooner or later. And just so happens that it happened to be out there on the on the mats of competition.
Right.
So, but and two, like, even me competing, like, they've seen me lose before. So, you know, I don't
by example.
Yeah, exactly. So I just go out there, and now I know what I got to work on Monday when I get back to the gym. And that's why I tell them, like, you know, we're going to study your match. We're going to go over what you need to work on, so this way this doesn't happen again, you know. And usually For the most part, the students that are really active in competing, they'll get right on, what they need to work on, and then the next competition they knock it out of the park, So
yeah, that's great. I think that speech you're talking about, right? That preemptive hype,
right,
that you give them, or not so much hype, but understanding. You give them an understanding that, look, you're here. I'm proud of you for that. Go out there and just do your best.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that's a really great precursor for anybody, right? Because one, they're probably dealing with a shit ton of nerves, right? Yeah. And the thoughts in their head. I mean, as a competitor, I'm sure still at this point, you get some butterflies, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, still. Yep.
Yeah. It's natural, right? It's inherent. So being for them, giving them a mindset, you know what I mean, before they even go in there, is a great way for them to prepare.
And all the work's done already. They already did all the work. All they have to do is show up and perform. As long as they're doing their best, like, I'm not going to be disappointed in them. Right.
The fact that they showed up, like, to your point, you showed up, you made weight.
Yeah.
It takes a lot, right? Because you see the people who say that they wanna compete, and then they don't show up.
Yeah.
Right. They don't make weight. They make excuses. And so the fact that you showed up and you were disciplined enough to make weight, that's difficult in itself.
Yep.
Because you see some of these people who have to cut weight, and I don't know if you've ever had to do a drastic weight cut, but dude, I've never had to do it, but I've seen it, and God, I mean, I feel for them, because that shit looks like it sucks. Have you ever had to do like a drastic weight cut?
Yeah, no, I have, like I said, like in my up until I was about a little bit after a purple belt, like I wasn't as regular as training, so I wasn't in shape like I am now, so I would have to cut unless I wanted to compete at like way higher weight,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not fun to do. You're basically hurting your body a little bit, depending on how much you have to cut. But yeah, I've had to cut like 10, 15 pounds before, like a day or two before.
Shit.
And then weigh in and then compete that same day. So
walk me through that, because that sounds fucking terrible.
Well, I know everybody does it a little bit different, but I just would put like a sauna suit on, go jogging, get some rounds in, like roll with the sauna suit in, and
how do you not fucking die doing that?
God, you just gotta push through it. You know what I mean? Like,
'cause you can't really hydrate.
Yeah, no,
right?
Very minimal. Just take little tiny sips of water, and then, Epsom salt bath. Then the next morning before you weigh in, you can check your weight. If you're a pound or two off, then same thing. Like, got to jog a little bit or jump some rope with the sauna suit on. But now, like, I don't really have to cut weight. I plan it out, so like I'll just diet a little bit before, so I'll be right on weight. Or sometimes I don't even have to cut.
I mean, that's got to be the best approach, right?
That's my favorite thing to do, because then I don't have to cut. Like, I could just be a little disciplined on the diet thing, which is super hard for me to do because I like to eat. But
yeah.
But yeah, that's what I like to do. Like, I got a competition next month, the 24th, and I got to be 154, and I walk around like 160 right now. So I just got to diet a little bit.
And you'll be good to go. Yeah, but I mean, that's got to be, one, the healthier way.
Yeah.
And two, you probably feel a lot better.
Yes. You're drained when you got to cut weight and you got to compete. It's a whole different. Your body's not the same.
Yeah, because I mean, let's say you weigh in a day before, right?
Mm-hmm.
How the fuck do you get back, up to competition level?
Well, if you got a day, you're okay. But really? Like, yeah, if you got a day,
so what do? You just eat a shit ton?
Yeah, you drink some electrolytes, get your electrolytes back up, and then you just got to eat clean. You don't want to eat like you haven't been eating. You don't want to just eat pizza and stuff. You just eat something lean, some vegetables, some white chicken or something. That'll give your body the nutrients it needs for the next day. But the worst is when you got to weigh in the same day. If you got to cut weight, you got to weigh in that day.
Have you done that?
Yeah, I've had to do that too.
Yeah. So what do you just try to hydrate as best as you can and eat something and then fucking cross your fingers?
Yeah, I brought some liquid IVs with me and drink a couple of those and try to eat a little bit. and that's it.
Fuck, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, I don't like the same day weigh-ins ones. Well, if you have to cut.
Yeah, right. So I mean, back to the earlier point, just being able to kind of walk around almost at your fight weight has to be the better route to go, right?
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah. Like I never would advise anybody to cut weight. Like if you don't have to cut, don't cut. But
yeah, because
sometimes these guys they want to compete at a lighter weight, you know. So it's up to them.
I mean, and then you hear the stories about people who cut fucking 20 pounds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
25 pounds. How do you? I mean, that for me that can't be healthy.
No, yeah, can't be good for you at all.
You know what I mean? Even having, I mean, to your point, yeah, you know, even if you have a day in between, I don't know. There's something about, you know, in my head at least, that you're not 100% going into that fight.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
No way, right? You got to be at some level of physical disadvantage because your body's taking a fucking beating.
I mean, there is some guys that, you know, wrestlers that do it every weekend from when they're in high school. So those guys, their bodies are used to it. But someone like me, I didn't cut weight a lot growing up, so it's not an easy thing. Yeah.
I guess you're right. Yeah, and a lot of these guys who at a high level do come from those kind of backgrounds.
Right.
So they're a little accustomed to that. But I could never imagine having to do something like that, though. I feel like you'd fucking die. You know what I mean? Like dropping 25 pounds.
You feel it for sure.
And then having to go and fight for your life, essentially. That is hats off to these guys who do that. You know what I mean? Every 3 to 6 months. And then go in there and you're competing at any level. I don't give a fuck what level you're competing at. You're still going out there and putting your body through a physically strenuous thing where
and you need to use it for the competition,
right?
You know?
Yeah, exactly. That's insane to me. But so as far as you running your gym, right? What do you use to manage your students as far as the levels that they're at? Do you kind of just mix everybody together and you say, hey, I need you? Is it like a baptism by fire? Or do you separate people and because you want them to understand basics first and then you graduate over here, right? Because every sport, every discipline, is kind of different, and the way you manage your gym also, right? Because and I'll use gymnastics as a reference. Because my son's coaches, they're Russian.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're fucking strict. Like they don't fuck around, right? They're world champion athletes, and they have world champion athletes, right? So the way they do it though is they cordon off their athletes. So the basics are the basics. Like you don't really mingle with the elite athletes until you've reached a certain pinnacle in your training, and we see that you're dedicated. You're at, your dedication is at that level. So then now you kind of is that something that you emulate, or do you do kind of like a baptism by fire? Because there's gyms where everyone intermingles, right? Who was it? Is it Cowboy? No, I don't think it's Cowboy Cerrone. Is Captain America from the UFC. His name's slipping my mind right now.
Randy Couture?
Randy Couture.
Okay.
So Randy Couture, the way he ran his gym was, I don't give a fuck if you're in the UFC. You have a contract with the UFC. You're gonna train and spar with the fucking the plumber, the 30-year-old plumber who has to go to work tomorrow. Like it doesn't matter. It's kind of a baptism by fire, I guess, if you will. Right. You know what I mean? So what's your how do you manage the way your students learn?
I guess it's not really baptism by fire. The way we have our schedule worked out is there is fundamental classes and mixed level classes, but everyone's welcome to go to both. So just they kind of know what they're getting into ahead of time. So they're not getting thrown in there. So like if you come to the fundamentals class, we're going to be learning a lot of basics, movement and theory type stuff. And then the mixed levels class is going to be more, sometimes we'll do, that fundamental stuff, and sometimes we'll do more advanced stuff, more technical stuff. So I encourage my students to go to both classes so they can see. And then, if they think the mixed levels class is too much for them, they want to stick to the fundamentals class, that's up to them. But I think the baptism by fire thing is the best way to learn. You get thrown in there, and fortunately, like you said, as long as your training partners are looking after you, it's better to put the newer people with the better belts, the upper belts, the more elite people, because they're gonna look out for them more than someone that's just getting there, and they understand the moves and stuff. They're not gonna try to hurt them. So I would say with jiu-jitsu, you want your newer students, your first dayers, day oneers, right. You want them to train with the upper belts, so that for one, they can see what it feels like, and for two, those people generally are going to take care of them. They're going to have their best interest in mind, because it's a new training partner too. Right. If they get hurt, then you lose a training partner.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's necessary, right? Because iron sharpens iron. So, right. Especially in martial arts where you can get hurt. So you always got to quote you, forever a student. Right. You should always be learning, no matter what level you're at.
With the sparring, I take it a little bit different. With the sparring, I actually encourage the individual. I don't want you to spar if you're not comfortable with it. I'm not gonna make you.
Yeah, because there is a fine line. Yeah. To your point, there's a fine line, right, where you can encourage or discourage somebody. Right.
And if they're not ready, I'll just tell them sit on the side and watch and jump in when you're ready. And usually it's only like a class or two, and they're like, okay, I want to try it. So,
right, yeah, no, I think that's a good approach. That's a good approach where you're the onus is on the person's, on the way their confidence.
Yeah, because I don't want to. I'll just be like, no, you're going in there no matter what, and then right. Like you said earlier, they'll get discouraged. Maybe they won't come back. I want them to come back. Right. Not for me, but for them. I want them to get better.
Right. So. Yeah, definitely. And that's just, that's being a good coach first and foremost, right? But also, just the way that you're instilling and growing the confidence in that person, because you're giving them an understanding that I'm not just gonna grab you from the back of the neck and shove you in there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they start to grow trust. And they listen to you more. I think and when you have somebody who's listening to you, genuinely listening to you, who trusts you, you're gonna have a good student. Mm-hmm. In my opinion,
definitely. And that goes hand in hand with me competing and having students that are actively competing, because then it shows them, the other students, that the things that we teach in there, it works right there. Out
proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, definitely. Well, if you had to leave, for the kid who's aspiring to, or the person, there's a person right now looking to start their own gym, right? To have a Diamond Valley, to be at the level of success that you've seen at this point in your life. If you had a one-liner for them, what would it be?
Just be real. That's for real. It's like a lot of gyms I go to, or not gyms I go to, but a lot of coaches I've seen, they'll treat their students one way to get them in their doors, and then after a couple months they're just like, oh, whatever, it's just another person. Just be real. If that's who you are, then be that person. But if you're going to be genuine and be nice to them when they come in, be that person all the way through. That would be that'll help your success, in my opinion. I feel like that's what I try to do. I just try to be as real as possible with all my students, treat them like family, and I think that to me, that makes a big difference in what people see you
Amen
as.
to that. Amen to that. Nothing better than being real, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't compromise your integrity for anybody, and be as genuine as you possibly can. Well, Anthony, I appreciate you coming on, man, for taking the time and having this conversation. Very fruitful. I appreciate you. Thank you. Big shout out to Diamond Valley Jiu Jitsu for everybody in the Inland Empire, Hemet area. Make sure you tap in with my man Anthony right here. This is M.F.K. Radio. Music, focus, knowledge. We out. Peace.